And joining us here for an exclusive conversation is Manish Tewari, Member of Parliament from the Congress. Mr. Tewari, good evening. Thank you very much for your time. Your first views, sir, your first comments on the budget that was presented this morning by Nirmala Sitharaman.
Well, if there's one word to characterize the budget, it is absolutely disappointing. For the simple reason it does not address any of the deep-seated structural issues in the Indian economy. And let me flag them off one by one. The first is that for almost over a decade now, almost 12 years, the nominal GDP has been declining. The nominal GDP in 2005 was 14%. In 2009, it was up to 20%. In 2025, nominal GDP is only 8%. There's hardly a difference between the real GDP and the nominal GDP. And when you formulate a budget, it is not the real GDP which is important, it's the nominal GDP, because that is the figure that you use in order to calculate the incidence of the taxes that you propose to levy. And that's why your tax buoyancy has gone for a complete toss. The budget last year had calculated a tax buoyancy of 1.1%. It is down to 0.6%. If you look at it across sectors, gross tax revenue, assumed growth was 13%. The real growth is 3%. Corporate tax, assumed growth 8%. Real growth 3%. Income tax, assumed growth 17%. Real growth 6%. Indirect taxes, assumed growth 11%. Real growth 2%. Similarly, private corporate investment has not kicked in. In spite of the best efforts of the government since 2019, they cut corporate income tax in 2019 when the finance minister presented a series of mini budgets. Then they came out with productivity-linked investment schemes. After that, they gave income tax exemptions. They slashed GST rates, but private capital investment simply has not picked up, and that's why public capex in this budget has been raised to 12.2 lakh crores. It's primarily because there is no private investment happening. Then, if you look at foreign investment, investors are fleeing the shores of India. The figures are all there to see. If you look at the capital account balance, you look at NERI, you look at some of the other numbers, these numbers are all in the negative. And then you have this unprecedented rise in India's debt and liability numbers. But before I come to that,
Yes.
look at one more macro number, Maria. Just allow me a minute. See, the total size of the budget is 53.47 lakh crores. Total revenue is 36.49 lakh crores. Total deficit, that is the money that you will borrow from the market to balance the books, is about 16.95 lakh crores. Your interest payments is at 14.3 lakh crores, which is essentially you are borrowing money to service the debt you've taken earlier. The economy is not growing. So the macroeconomic fundamentals are completely and absolutely out of whack.
Okay, but Mr. Tewari, the big picture, if we were to look at it, the government is also ensuring that there are buffers to ensure that its concerns with regards to growth are addressed, the concerns of the industry are taken care of with regards to opening up of new avenues, particularly with the FTAs. I was speaking to members of the CII earlier today. They were of the opinion that the government has shown its intent. Now it is for the industry to really revive that animal spirit that is famously spoken about.
Well, if the animal spirits would have been revived, Maria, then our outstanding debt and liability position won't be what it is today. Look at the numbers again. 2013-14, total debt and liabilities of the central government stood at 56.51 lakh crores. In 26-27, the estimated liability is going to be, debt and liability is going to be 214.8 lakh crores. That is a 4x increase in a span of 12 years. It is obvious that private industry, for whatever reason, is not stepping up to the plate. And the two things which figured prominently in the budget presented by the finance minister was semiconductors. Now, look at semiconductors. China spent $40 billion in 2025 on its semiconductor industry. What was India's spend? 4.5 billion. And a majority of that is private spend. Look at artificial intelligence. China spent $98 billion in 25, out of which $56 billion came from the state budget. India spent $20 billion, most of it coming from the private sector, and the government spend was only $1.2 billion over 5 years. With these numbers, you are not going to close the gap with China. And whether you like it or not, till the time you do not address the structural imbalance in the Indian economy, which has come to characterize the finances of this country over the past 10 years, you are not moving forward.
But Mr. Tewari, one would say that particularly in the manufacturing sector, there are a series of reforms which have been announced this time around. Won't you then agree that what is being seen as India's now or never moment, particularly in this very crucial manufacturing sector which generates jobs, has to be backed by proper execution? Is the challenge now for the government about execution rather than the political intent, which is being reflected in the form of reforms and also policy?
Well, let me answer your earlier question first about FTAs, because that's a very interesting question that you asked, Maria. Thank you very much for asking that. You see, if you look at the hard numbers again, all those countries that with which India has signed a free trade agreement, the balance of trade is adverse against India. So therefore, it begs a question that are those free trade agreements actually working for India, or are they working against the interest of Indian industry? And these are all publicly available figures. I mean, there's nothing which is surreptitious about them. When it comes to the question of execution, ultimately, you see, if you do not create an ecosystem whereby private investment or private investors or private corporate investment does not really feel that they're getting a bang for their buck, or they are hesitant about making these investments, which has been the case now going back to the pre-pandemic era also, your economy or the size of the economy is not going to grow. You see, ultimately, the size of your union budget is only 53 lakh crores. There are committed liabilities, defense expenditure, subsidies, and various other essentials, which, so therefore, the wiggle room for the finance minister is very little. And that is why this emphasis on trying to kickstart private investment, which is not happening, and that's something which government needs to seriously reflect upon. I don't want to bore you with more numbers, but just one final number: even your private consumption expenditure, and these are figures which have been put out by the Ministry of Statistics, is lower than what it was in 2012. So therefore, even private household consumption is at a historic low.
Okay. Those are concerns that you have had, Mr. Tewari. Thank you for speaking to us. Joining us now is BJP MP